In the dim glow of oil lamps flickering against cracked plaster walls in a back-alley brothel tucked behind the Ponte Vecchio in Florence, Niccolò Machiavelli sat on a rickety wooden stool, quill in hand, eyes sharp as a hawk's. It was 1509, and the air was thick with the scent of cheap perfume, sweat, and secrets. Around him, 40 women moved like shadows, laughing, whispering, sizing up the next man stumbling through the door with coins in his purse and hunger in his eyes. But Machiavelli wasn't here for pleasure. He was here on a mission that would haunt him for the rest of his life, to peel back the skin of male desire and stare straight into the raw, trembling weakness beneath. He had already spoken to over 100 of them across Florence, Rome, and the dusty roads between. By the time this chapter of his secret observations ended, the number would climb past 400. Not as a customer, though the temptation tested even his iron will, but as a silent student of the human animal. These women, who sold their bodies to princes, merchants, soldiers, and priests, saw men at their most unguarded. No titles, no armor, no lies about virtue or power, just flesh, coin, and the desperate need to be wanted. And what they taught him about male weakness? It wasn't pretty, it wasn't noble, but it was the brutal truth that would later bleed into every page of The Prince, every warning in his letters, every cynical laugh he shared with friends over wine. Because in those brothels, Machiavelli didn't just see bodies for sale. He saw empires crumble before they were even built. He saw kings toppled not by armies, but by their own uncontrollable hunger. He saw strong men reduced to sniveling boys the moment a woman smiled the right way. Let me pull you into that world with me right now, as if you're sitting beside him on that stool, the laughter of courtesans echoing in your ears. Imagine the year is 1509. Florence is a powder keg of politics. The Medici family has been exiled. The Republic is fragile. And Machiavelli, once the sharpest diplomat in the Second Chancery, is still riding high on missions that take him from the French court to the camps of Cesare Borgia. He's seen power up close, how it's grabbed, how it's lost. But something is missing. The great thinkers of the day talk about virtue, God, and fate. Machiavelli wants the real machinery, the part no one admits exists. One rainy night, after a particularly frustrating diplomatic failure, he wanders into a brothel not far from the Arno River. The madam, a sharp-eyed woman named Caterina, recognizes him not as a regular, but as the clever secretary who once negotiated with popes. "Signore," she says with a knowing smile, "you look like a man hunting answers, not flesh." He pays her well, not for a room, but for permission to sit quietly in the corner for weeks, to watch, to listen, to interview the girls between clients, promising them protection and extra coin if they speak honestly. The first lesson hits him like a slap. Men lie to themselves about why they come. A powerful banker, fresh from closing a deal worth thousands of florins, struts in like a lion. But within minutes, he's on his knees, literally, begging one of the women to call him "my lord," while she mocks his softness. "See," the prostitute whispers later to Machiavelli, wiping sweat from her brow, "they pay me not for my body, but to make them feel like kings for an hour. The richer they are, the more they need me to pretend they're not terrified of losing it all." Machiavelli scribbles furiously. Male weakness number 1, the illusion of control. These men rule boardrooms and battlefields day by day, but at night they surrender everything to a woman who knows their secrets. One after another the stories pour out. A captain of the city guard, feared by thieves and rivals alike, confesses to a girl named Isabella that he cries after every battle. She strokes his hair, charges double, and sends him home lighter in purse and spirit. "He'll be back tomorrow," she tells Machiavelli with a shrug. "They always come back when the mask slips." As the weeks turn to months, the number of women he speaks with grows. 200, 300. He travels with his diplomatic pouch, stopping in roadside inns that double as houses of pleasure, interviewing girls who've serviced cardinals in Rome and mercenaries in the countryside. The patterns repeat like a deadly dance. Men who boast of conquests in war become putty when a woman withholds a smile. Merchants who haggle ruthlessly over spices crumble when flattered about their manhood. Even priests, sworn to celibacy, sneak in under hooded cloaks and reveal fears they'd never whisper in confession. But the real revelation, the one that would shape his entire philosophy, comes during a single chaotic night when the brothel hosts a secret gathering of Florence's elite. Word has spread among the powerful. A new shipment of exotic girls from Venice has arrived, skilled in pleasures that make kings forget their crowns. Over 400 men will pass through these doors in the coming days, but Machiavelli stays hidden behind a screen, watching it all unfold like a general studying the enemy's lines. Picture it, the room packed with silk doublets and velvet caps, laughter too loud, wine flowing like the Arno in flood. A young nobleman, heir to a banking fortune, arrives with his friends. He's arrogant, loud, the kind of man who believes his bloodline makes him invincible. He picks the most beautiful girl in the house. Let's call her Lucia, with eyes like black diamonds and a tongue sharper than any dagger. He throws gold at her feet, demands she worship him. She does for the first hour. Then she starts asking questions. "Tell me, my lord, do you ever fear your father will cut you off?" The man laughs it off, but by the third hour he's confessing everything: his debts, his mistresses, his terror of being seen as weak. Lucia listens, nods, charges triple when he begs her to stay the night. By morning, he's ruined, emotionally and financially. His friends mock him later, but they'll make the same mistakes. Machiavelli watches this play out 400 times in variations. The soldier who boasts of battlefield glory, but whimpers when Lucia teases him about his little sword. The merchant who pedestalizes her, calling her a goddess, only to be discarded when his money runs dry. The politician who promises the world for one more night, then panics when she threatens to tell his wife. Each time, the weakness is the same. Men don't come for sex, they come for validation. They come to escape the fear that they are not enough. And the women, they see it instantly. They exploit it effortlessly. It's not our bodies they buy. It's the lie that they are strong. Take that lie away, and they fall apart like wet parchment. He starts to connect the dots to his own life. Remember the ugly prostitute in Verona, the one he wrote about in that infamous letter to his friend Luigi Guicciardini, the one so repulsive he vomited after her? That wasn't just a crude joke, it was the flip side of the same coin. Even Machiavelli, the master observer, felt the pull of raw desire overriding judgment. He had gone in seeking release after months of travel, only to confront the grotesque reality that lust makes fools of us all. "I gave it to her anyway," he confessed in the letter, half laughing at himself. But in the brothels, surrounded by 400 experts in male frailty, he saw the pattern everywhere. Desire wasn't just physical, it was the crack in the armor through which Fortuna, could drive a dagger straight into a man's soul. You can almost hear him thinking as he writes by candlelight back in his study. If these women can topple a man in an hour with nothing but words and a smile, what could a clever prince do with an entire kingdom? This is the suppressed lesson no historian likes to talk about. While the world praises the prince for its cold advice on power, be feared, not loved, keep your word only when it suits you, Machiavelli's real genius came from these nights in the brothels. He learned that male weakness isn't in the battlefield or the council chamber, it's in the bedroom, in the desperate need for a woman's approval, in the way even the strongest man will trade his future for one night of feeling desired. Let's go deeper, because this story doesn't end in Florence. As Machiavelli's diplomatic career spirals, when the Medici return in 1512, and he's arrested, tortured on the rack, then exiled to his family farm, he carries these observations like hidden weapons. In the quiet of San Casciano, while writing The Prince in 1513, he draws directly from what the prostitutes taught him.
Chapter after chapter, you can see the echoes. Men are so simple and so much creatures of circumstance that the deceiver will always find someone ready to be deceived. He saw it in the brothels. Men deceive themselves first, then beg women to join the illusion.
One particular story from his notes, never published but whispered among his friends, involves a cardinal who visited the same brothel night after night. The man was on the short list for pope. He had influence over kings. But one girl, let's call her Bianca, discovered his secret. He was terrified of aging. She whispered promises of eternal youth in his ear, charged him a fortune, and slowly drained his ambition. By the time the conclave came, he was a broken man, too distracted to campaign. A rival took the throne. Machiavelli smiled when he heard the news. Fortuna favors the man who masters his desires. The lessons piled up, relentless and unforgiving. Weakness number 2, predictability. The prostitutes could forecast a man's downfall before he even spoke. If he bragged too much, he was insecure. If he paid extra for praise, he was desperate. If he tried to negotiate the price, he was cheap in spirit and would betray anyone for a better deal. Machiavelli used this in politics. He advised Lorenzo de' Medici to study men the way these women did, not as ideals, but as animals driven by base needs. A prince must know how to be both lion and fox, he wrote. But the real trick? Know when the lion is really just a lamb in disguise, begging to be petted. As the months in exile drag on, Machiavelli's own weakness surfaces. He writes desperate letters begging for work, for favor, for a return to power. He visits brothels still, seeking not just release, but confirmation that his insights are correct. And they are. Every man he watches, rich, poor, young, old, repeats the cycle. They pedestalize women, confuse lust with love, surrender power for validation, then wonder why their empires slip away. One soldier, fresh from victory against the Pisans, enters boasting of glory. By dawn, he's crying in a girl's arms about his dead brother. She comforts him, for a price. He leaves broke and broken. Machiavelli notes it coldly. Desire exposes the wound. Control it, or it controls you. But here's where the story twists in a way that will keep you listening, because this isn't just ancient history. These 400 women weren't teaching Machiavelli about sex. They were teaching him about life, about how the same weakness that destroys men in brothels destroys them in boardrooms, bedrooms, and battlefields today. Fast forward 500 years. Look at the scandals that topple CEOs, politicians, athletes. A powerful man with everything, money, status, family, throws it away for a fleeting night with someone who makes him feel young, strong, desired. He pedestalizes her. He seeks validation. He loses control. The prostitutes saw it coming every single time. Machiavelli's genius was turning that observation into a weapon. In The Prince, he warns rulers never to let emotion cloud judgment, be ruthless when needed. But the hidden chapter, the one the brothels wrote, is this: master yourself first. Because if you can't control your own hunger for validation, some clever prostitute, metaphorical or literal, will control you, your rivals, your enemies, even your allies. They'll smile, flatter, and watch you hand over the keys to your kingdom. Picture Machiavelli now, old and gray in 1527, dying in Florence as the city falls into chaos once more. He never published those brothel notes. They were too raw, too dangerous, but they lived in every line he wrote. He laughed on his deathbed, according to legend, telling friends he was going to hell to debate with princes and popes, men just like the ones he'd watched crumble. The 400 women, they had shown him the ultimate truth. Male weakness isn't in lacking strength, it's in pretending the strength is unbreakable. Real power comes from seeing the crack and guarding it with your life.
You're still here with me, aren't you? Heart pounding a little faster, maybe rethinking that last text you sent, or that deal you almost made out of desperation. That's the magic of what those 400 prostitutes taught Machiavelli. It wasn't scandal, it wasn't sin, it was the mirror no man wants to look into, the one that shows us we're all one smile, one whisper, one moment of unchecked desire away from losing everything. So the next time you feel that pull, that hunger to be wanted, to prove yourself, to chase the illusion, remember the man in the brothel with the quill. He watched 400 experts dismantle egos bigger than empires. He turned their wisdom into the most dangerous political manual ever written. And if you listen to the end of this tale, if you let it sink into your bones, you might just walk away stronger than the kings who fell before you. Because in the end, the greatest prince isn't the one who conquers the world. He's the one who conquers himself. And that, my friend, is the lesson 400 prostitutes burned into the soul of Niccolò Machiavelli. One secret, one sigh, one shattering truth at a time. The flickering oil lamps of 1509 Florence have been replaced by the cold blue glow of smartphone screens in 2025. The back-alley brothels behind the Ponte Vecchio, they've evolved into private jets, luxury hotel suites in Manhattan and Dubai, encrypted apps, and high-end modeling parties in the Hamptons. But the men walking through those doors, powerful, arrogant, convinced they're untouchable, haven't changed at all. And the women, or sometimes men, who see them at their most naked, still spot the exact same cracks in the armor that 400 prostitutes revealed to Niccolò Machiavelli centuries ago. You're still here with me, aren't you? Heart pounding a little faster, maybe rethinking that last text you sent, or that deal you almost made out of desperation. That's the magic of what those 400 prostitutes taught Machiavelli. It wasn't scandal, it wasn't sin, it was the mirror no man wants to look into, the one that shows us we're all one smile, one whisper, one moment of unchecked desire away from losing everything. So the next time you feel that pull, that hunger to be wanted, to prove yourself, to chase the illusion, remember the man in the brothel with the quill. He watched 400 experts dismantle egos bigger than empires. He turned their wisdom into the most dangerous political manual ever written. And if you listen to the end of this tale, if you let it sink into your bones, you might just walk away stronger than the kings who fell before you. Because in the end, the greatest prince isn't the one who conquers the world, he's the one who conquers himself. And that, my friend, is the lesson 400 prostitutes burned into the soul of Niccolò Machiavelli. One secret, one sigh, one shattering truth at a time. The flickering oil lamps of 1509 Florence have been replaced by the cold blue glow of smartphone screens in 2025. The back-alley brothels behind the Ponte Vecchio, they've evolved into private jets, luxury hotel suites in Manhattan and Dubai, encrypted apps, and high-end modeling parties in the Hamptons. But the men walking through those doors, powerful, arrogant, convinced they're untouchable, haven't changed at all. And the women, or sometimes men, who see them at their most naked, still spot the exact same cracks in the armor that 400 prostitutes revealed to Niccolò Machiavelli centuries ago. You're still here with me, aren't you? Heart pounding a little faster, maybe rethinking that last text you sent, or that deal you almost made out of desperation. That's the magic of what those 400 prostitutes taught Machiavelli. It wasn't scandal, it wasn't sin, it was the mirror no man wants to look into, the one that shows us we're all one smile, one whisper, one moment of unchecked desire away from losing everything. So the next time you feel that pull, that hunger to be wanted, to prove yourself, to chase the illusion, remember the man in the brothel with the quill. He watched 400 experts dismantle egos bigger than empires. He turned their wisdom into the most dangerous political manual ever written. And if you listen to the end of this tale, if you let it sink into your bones, you might just walk away stronger than the kings who fell before you. Because in the end, the greatest prince isn't the one who conquers the world. He's the one who conquers himself. And that, my friend, is the lesson 400 prostitutes burned into the soul of Niccolò Machiavelli. One secret, one sigh, one shattering truth at a time.
High-end brothels operating in Massachusetts and Virginia in recent years catered directly to politicians, military officials, government contractors, and corporate executives. Prosecutors described luxurious apartments where powerful men paid top dollar for discretion. When the ring was busted, names started surfacing in court. Doctors, professors, lawmakers. One after another, men who made laws about morality by day were caught chasing the exact validation Machiavelli's prostitutes described. Make me feel like a king for an hour. The operators knew the playbook. Charge more for flattery. Exploit the fear of exposure. Watch strong men crumble when the illusion cracks. Remember the Me Too wave that began in 2017? It wasn't ancient history. It was the brothel doors flung wide open in the digital age. Harvey Weinstein, the Hollywood mogul who could greenlight careers with a phone call, allegedly used his power to coerce, assault, and silence women for decades. Dozens came forward. His empire collapsed. Kevin Spacey, Louis C.K., Dustin Hoffman, men at the peak of influence, watched their legacies burn because they mistook position for permission and validation for strength. In politics, Al Franken resigned from the Senate over groping allegations. Roy Moore's Senate bid imploded. The pattern held. The men who boasted loudest about conquest often fell hardest when the women finally spoke. The prostitutes of Florence would have predicted every single downfall. They pay us to lie to them, one told Machiavelli. Today, they pay with NDAs, settlements, or silence, until they can't. Even in 2025-2026, the cycle continued without mercy. Matt Gaetz's Attorney General nomination collapsed amid resurfaced allegations. Pete Hegseth faced confirmation battles despite patterns of misconduct claims. Corey Mills dealt with revenge porn accusations. Scandals involving extramarital affairs, staffers, and leaked texts kept erupting in Congress. Polarization sometimes shields the powerful. Shamelessness has become a strange armor, but the underlying weakness remains identical. A man in control of budgets, wars, or laws still trades it all for one night or one text thread where someone makes him feel desired, virile, alive. He pedestals the source of that feeling. He loses perspective. He becomes predictable. And someone, a staffer, a journalist, a victim, or just fortune, drives the dagger home. Here's the brutal continuity that would make Machiavelli smile grimly from his grave. In the brothels, the girls saw that men don't primarily buy sex. They buy the temporary suspension of their deepest fear, that they are not enough, not strong enough, not young enough, not powerful enough. Today's modern equivalents, whether it's a tech billionaire on a private island, a CEO running secret parties, or a congressman sexting a staffer, chase the exact same drug. They confuse lust with love, flattery with loyalty, dominance with desire. They hand over leverage because for one intoxicating moment they feel like the version of themselves they sell to the world. The women and operators in these modern setups still read the tells instantly. The man who brags too loudly is insecure. The one who pays extra for praise is desperate. The one who negotiates or threatens when rejected, he'll betray anyone when his back is against the wall. Machiavelli turned those observations into The Prince. Today's survivors, the ones who keep power despite scandals, often do the same. They accept the weakness exists, guard it ruthlessly, and never let emotion cloud the bigger game. But most don't. They repeat the Florentine banker's mistake. They strut in arrogant, leave broken, and wonder why their empire slipped away while they were distracted chasing validation. Look at the Abercrombie CEO trafficking men while his company sold masculine fantasy. Look at the politicians texting for nudes while debating national security.
Look at the billionaires named in Epstein files, their legacies forever tainted by whispers. You can feel the pull even now, can't you? That quiet voice saying, "It won't happen to me. I'm smarter, stronger, more in control." That's exactly what the 400 prostitutes heard before every downfall. That's what the modern operators hear from every new client who thinks this time will be different. The lesson hasn't aged a day. Male weakness isn't absence of strength, it's the refusal to admit the crack exists. In Florence, it cost fortunes and reputations. Today, it costs companies, seats in Congress, presidential legacies, and sometimes freedom. The brothel has gone digital, global, and luxurious, but the transaction is identical, coin or power for the lie that you are unbreakable. Machiavelli didn't just watch, he studied, noted, and armed himself with the truth. The men who fall in today's scandals, they walk in blind, convinced they're lions, and leave as lambs who handed the shepherd their own leash. The oil lamps are gone, the stakes are higher, but the game, it's the same deadly dance. And if you're still reading, still feeling that uneasy recognition in your chest, then the 400 women and their modern counterparts have already taught you the most dangerous truth of all. Master yourself first, or someone else always will. Because desire doesn't care about your title, your billions, or your votes. It only cares that you need to be wanted. And in that need, empires, old and new, continue to fall, one whispered promise at a time. The oil lamps of Florence have long since gone dark, but the dance continues under neon, camera flashes, and the endless scroll of digital screens. In 1509, 400 prostitutes taught Machiavelli the raw mechanics of male weakness, the desperate hunger for validation, the illusion of control that shatters with a single well-timed whisper or withheld smile. Today, in the luxury apartments of Boston and Northern Virginia, in the shadow of Epstein's Island, in the hushed corridors of Congress and Hollywood suites, the same lesson echoes, except now the women aren't just observing from the corner. Many have stepped into the light, wielding influence, exposure, or quiet orchestration in ways that can elevate, protect, or destroy. You're still here because the story keeps twisting. The men keep walking through the doors thinking they're lions, but the women, the accusers, the enablers, the operators, the whistleblowers have learned to play the game with sharper tools. Some use silence as currency, others weaponize voice, a few run the entire operation. In each case, female power in these modern scandals isn't passive victimhood or simple seduction. It's strategic, sometimes collaborative, often devastatingly effective at exposing the crack Machiavelli spotted centuries ago. Let's step back into the high-end brothel network that serviced politicians, military officers, tech executives, and doctors in recent years. Luxury apartments in Massachusetts and Virginia, rented discreetly, stocked with sophisticated booking systems, and women brought in primarily from Asia. The operators, a network allegedly run by individuals including women like Hannah Lee and associates. Prosecutors described a well-oiled machine where clients paid top dollar for discretion and fantasy. The women working there were framed by authorities as victims, yet in the shadows of such operations, the real leverage often sits with those who know the client list, the preferences, the moments when powerful men drop their guard. One whisper to investigators, one leaked detail, and careers teeter. Machiavelli's prostitutes charged coin for the illusion. Today's operators understand that knowledge itself is the ultimate coin, and women frequently hold the ledger.
The pattern repeats across scandals. In the Epstein web, Ghislaine Maxwell stands as the most infamous example of female power enabling the machine for years, recruiting, scheduling, grooming, according to court accounts. But she wasn't alone. Dozens of women, assistants, schedulers, socialites allegedly helped keep the operation running, from managing the massages to introducing friends for gifts and access. Victims like Virginia Giuffre, who worked at Mar-a-Lago before being pulled into the circle, later became one of The pattern repeats across scandals. In the Epstein web, Ghislaine Maxwell stands as the most infamous example of female power enabling the machine for years, recruiting, scheduling, grooming, according to court accounts. But she wasn't alone. Dozens of women, assistants, schedulers, socialites allegedly helped keep the operation running, from managing the massages to introducing friends for gifts and access. Victims like Virginia Giuffre, who worked at Mar-a-Lago before being pulled into the circle, later became one of the most vocal forces demanding accountability, filing suits and pushing for document releases that rattled global elites. Female power here operates on a spectrum, some facilitated for proximity to wealth and influence, others, once freed from the grip, turned the tables with testimony and persistence that no single man could easily dismiss. The girls in Florence saw the weakness and exploited it for survival. Their modern counterparts sometimes do the same, but with lawyers, media, and public opinion as additional weapons. Then there's #MeToo, the earthquake that still reverberates. Tarana Burke planted the seed years earlier with Me Too as a healing call for survivors, particularly women of color. When Alyssa Milano amplified the hashtag in 2017 amid the Harvey Weinstein revelations, it exploded. Actresses like Ashley Judd, Rose McGowan, and dozens more stepped forward, their stories toppling a mogul who had wielded casting couch power for decades. Nearly half of the prominent men who lost jobs in the initial wave were replaced by women. Female power didn't just expose, it reshaped boardrooms and newsrooms. Weinstein's fall wasn't caused by one woman, but by a collective wave, women who had once been silenced finding strength in numbers. The prostitutes of old dismantled egos one by one in private rooms. In the digital age, women dismantled empires in public threads. Yet the mirror isn't always flattering. In some scandals, women appear as both participants and wielders of influence. Olivia Nuzzi, a journalist, found herself at the center of a frenzy involving an unconventional relationship with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. while engaged to another prominent reporter, a saga that spilled into allegations of further entanglements with politicians she covered. Stories like these remind us that desire cuts both ways. The hunger for validation, proximity to power, or narrative control isn't exclusively male. Machiavelli would note the predictability. Even sharp observers can find themselves drawn into the very dance they once chronicled from the sidelines. Look at congressional corridors in 2025-2026. Rep. Tony Gonzalez admitted to an affair with a former staffer who later died by suicide, with leaked texts showing explicit exchanges. Female staffers in such environments often hold intimate knowledge, texts, patterns, moments of vulnerability. When they speak, or when their stories surface through family or leaks, entire political futures hang in the balance. Rep. Nancy Mace pushed aggressively for greater transparency on congressional sexual harassment settlements, forcing votes and shining light on taxpayer-funded payouts. Women lawmakers like Mace aren't just victims or bystanders. They leverage institutional power to demand accountability, even when it crosses party lines. In state houses across America, hundreds of allegations since 2017 have involved male lawmakers, with female colleagues and staff frequently driving the push for investigations or resignations. Female power here is institutional and moral, refusing to let the old "boys will be boys" shield remain intact. In corporate and entertainment worlds, the shift is measurable. Studies show organizations with more women in senior roles are significantly more likely to dismiss men accused of abuse, rather than quietly moving the victim out.
The enablers of yesterday sometimes become the enforcers of today. Yet the brothel logic persists. Men still enter seeking the illusion, youth, desirability, dominance without consequence, and women, whether as accusers, operators, or reformers, can decide when that illusion ends. Machiavelli sat in those Florentine rooms watching men trade fortunes and futures for fleeting validation. The 400 women taught him that desire exposes the wound every time. In our era, female power has evolved. Some women still trade in the illusion for survival or gain, as alleged in trafficking networks or enabling circles. Others shatter it publicly, turning personal pain into collective reckoning. A few navigate the gray zones, journalists entangled with sources, staffers in complicated dynamics, survivors who become advocates with their own agendas. The brutal continuity, the weakness Machiavelli documented remains stubbornly male in its raw form, the need to be wanted, to feel strong, to escape the fear of inadequacy. But the power to exploit, expose, or reform that weakness now flows more freely in female hands, through testimony, networks, media, lawsuits, and sheer numbers. The men who master themselves, as the old Florentine advised, still rise. Those who don't, they still fall, often faster and more publicly than in 1509, because the women watching and acting have learned the lessons too. You feel it, don't you? The uneasy recognition that the game has more players now, and the rules favor those who see the crack clearest. The prostitutes taught the prince how power really works at its most naked. Their successors, accusers, enablers, reformers, operators are teaching the rest of us that female power in scandals isn't just reaction, it's often the hidden hand that decides when the mask finally drops. Master the hunger, or someone else will always hold the leash. The dance continues, but the music has changed, and more women know the steps by heart.